Captain Marvel has a very real claim to being one of the strongest Avengers around, but as with all strong heroes, they do need to be humbled every once in a while. I'm Adam Andrews, you're watching Top 10 Nerd, and this is the top 10 superheroes who humbled Captain Marvel. Number 10, Rogue. The mutant Rogue first started out as a villain in Marvel Comics. She was part of Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and one of their first attacks on the Avengers involved ambushing a recently returned Carol Danvers. Rogue, who was still learning to use her abilities, accidentally fully absorbed both Danvers' memories and her powers. The attack completely drained Carol of her powers and erased her mind, and then, to add insult to injury, Rogue immediately just chucked Carol off the Golden Gate Bridge. Luckily, Spider-Woman was there and able to rescue her, and Professor Xavier was able to restore Carol's memories, but it wasn't complete. The actual emotional connection to those memories, as well as to her family and her friends, was gone. Carol remembered things, but it was more like watching a show about her life instead of living it herself. Carol regained her powers eventually, but Carol's life was destroyed by a scared young woman who then had to deal with the consequences of her actions and the harm it caused to both of them. Number 9, the Hulk. This one is hilarious, but it does also show that despite what some fans may claim, Carol Danvers isn't necessarily the strongest Avenger around. During 2013's Avengers run in issue number 39, during a little scuffle between the Illuminati and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Avengers team, War Machine comes upon Doc Green, aka the Smart Hulk. Now, as you can imagine, the Hulk is just a bit too much for Rhodey to handle, and so Captain America sends in Carol Danvers, and she comes in spectacular fashion, crashing the Hulk into a massive crater and then pounding on the guy with all of her might, feeding him the left right to the point that she's even a little winded. But in that moment of catching her breath, we see the Hulk is just laying there, hands behind his head, chilling out, relaxing, before he says, "Feel better?" And then he punches Captain Marvel so hard that she goes flying into the sky, through a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, and right out of Earth's atmosphere. And that is an insane punch. Number 8, Cyclops. With Cyclops being a mutant who can fire massive energy beams from his eyes, and Captain Marvel being a hero who can absorb huge amounts of energy, most people would have just believed that Carol Danvers would have any fight between the two in the bag. But Cyclops has something that we don't really think about very often: tactical know-how. Or we can call it plot armor, you pick. Cyclops has been compared to Batman with his use of prep time. So, during Marvel's Contest of Chaos, where Agatha Harkness uses her magic to force the world's greatest heroes into combat against one another, Captain Marvel and Cyclops got paired off against one another. Now, this took place just after a recent team-up between the two in X-Men Captain Marvel crossover, Lord of the Brood / Revenge of the Brood. With their battlefield being a small fishing village in Iceland, Cyclops' first attack on Captain Marvel results in her just absorbing the energy blast and not hurting her at all. Now, for his next attack, he removes his visor and unleashes his full power on Captain Marvel, and again, this only makes Carol more powerful than ever before, but that was exactly what Cyclops was counting on. Now, before Captain Marvel can make the next move, he reminds her that if she uses her powers now, she'll wipe out him, but also everyone else in not just Iceland, but all of Scandinavia, just like she almost did in a pretty personal moment he learned about from their previous encounter. He basically blackmailed her. Number 7, Scarlet Witch. Now, for this point, we are going to be stepping away ever so briefly from the comics to talk about the MCU. Taking place in the Multiverse of Madness, in the alternate world of Earth 838, instead of Carol Danvers, this live-action Captain Marvel happened to be Maria Rambeau, the mother of Monica Rambeau and the best friend of Carol. She was certainly powerful, assuming she underwent the same process that gave Carol her powers. However, she was not powerful enough to face the Scarlet Witch. Hot on the trails of Doctor Strange and America Chavez, Wanda Maximoff of the main cinematic universe possessed her alternate counterpart and went on an absolute warpath where she wiped out this world's entire squad of Illuminati. To her credit, Rambeau held out the longest of the entire team. After Wanda threw her through a wall and then wiped out Captain Carter, Captain Marvel came up and put up a good old fight, putting her cosmic energy against Wanda's chaos magic, but she was overpowered and then squish-squashed by a statue that wiped her out for good. Number 6, Spider-Man. In All Out Avengers issue number 5, we get to see Spider-Man not only take down Carol temporarily, but he happens to take down an entire squad of Avengers. Or at least he leads them on a merry chase and does more than anyone expected. Now Spider-Man believes that She-Hulk, Black Panther, Blade, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and of course Captain Marvel have all been brainwashed by a guy called the Grand Manipulator, and he has a device called the Resequencer that he's trying to get to a guy at Empire State University who can help them. When the chase begins, he shorts out Iron Man's armor, he dodges over She-Hulk, and then it's Captain Marvel's turn. She grabs him straight by the throat and starts flying up, but then Spidey, out of nowhere, he does something kind of terrifying. Flicking a tiny little capsule into Carol's mouth and apologizing, the capsule activates a web attack that completely fills her mouth and throat with webs that catch her completely off guard. She's freaking out, unable to breathe, as he swings off telling her not to panic as it will dissolve in about 60 seconds. Number 5. Ratchet. Okay, look, yes, this is a crossover of the Avengers and the Transformers, so we already have to accept that this is just for fun. But this defeat of Captain Marvel is kinda downright pitiful. So basically, as with any good crossover, our two teams of do-gooders, the Avengers and the Autobots, have to have a little fight when they first ever meet, which takes place in issue 2 of the New Avengers / the Transformers from 2007. When the two go to clash in the first few pages, one of the first fights to take place is between Carol Danvers, who is in her Miss Marvel attire, and the Autobot medic, Ratchet. Not only does Ratchet actually defeat Carol, but he does so without even leaving his vehicle mode. When Carol goes in to attack, punching Ratchet's windshield, she ends up getting about halfway into his cab, going off about letting loose like the Kree warrior she is, and all Ratchet does is activate his airbags, completely trapping the Kree warrior with her legs flailing halfway out of the driver's side window, as he says, and I quote, "Standard human containment techniques do not always preserve the subject's dignity." It's utterly ridiculous and kind of hilarious and embarrassing. Number 4. Tigra. Taking place in 2006's Miss Marvel, specifically issue number 19, when the Puppet Master decides to use his mind control powers to force heroes to fight each other to the pearly gates, arena style, Miss Marvel, Sleepwalker, and Machine Man head to Chile to stop him. Now this, of course, leads to confrontations with several controlled heroes, as Miss Marvel has to battle several different superpowered beings, one of which would be Tigra. Now Tigra comes in hot, hitting Carol in the back and bringing her to the ground. As an Avenger, Tigra is a supreme fighter, and she is able to pull Carol's hair, dodge one of her energy attacks, and slash Carol right across the face with her claws before taking a boot to the face. Then another mind-controlled hero, Silverclaw, jumps in and shoves Carol face first into a cliff face before grabbing Carol around the waist. Now Carol starts to just fly up, but she suddenly starts to feel all woozy wibbly wobbly, and this is when she realizes that Tigra had actually coated her claws with poison that knocks Carol out cold, and she falls from the sky, allowing her to get captured by Puppet Master. Number 3. Iron Man. I think we can all agree that Marvel Comics' second Civil War was a real low point for the character of Captain Marvel. They took Carol Danvers, who used to be incredibly likable and respectable, and made her a rash authoritarian with motives that make literally no sense. Essentially, the story dealt with the discovery of an inhuman precognitive that got visions of future crimes. Captain Marvel wanted to take these as fact and arrest potential criminals before they had even committed said crimes, while Tony Stark, Iron Man, thought that was a dangerous load of hogwaller. There are many reasons why Carol was just straight up wrong, and we will talk about two big ones in just a moment, but during one of the first ever fights between the opposing heroes, taking place in issue number 5 of the event, we get to see just how Tony Stark is someone you should just not underestimate. Now, of course, Tony has proved this time and time again. As they clash, Tony fires off a beam of energy directly at Carol, which she very smugly reminds him she can absorb. But he did not forget that fact, and in fact, he planned for the future without upsetting the natural order of things by developing a tainted energy attack that actually disabled Captain Marvel in one quick move, causing Carol to fall out of the sky like a bug that just got zapped by a lamp. Number 2. The Hulk and Hawkeye. Again, like I said, the whole concept of Captain Marvel using the Inhuman precog, known as Ulysses, as a way of stopping future potential crimes had quite a few loopholes. A big one being that all those visions were preventable and changeable, meaning his visions weren't even guaranteed to come to pass. This made it extremely problematic to start arresting individuals based on those crimes. One of the first to be targeted was the Hulk. Ulysses had a vision that the Hulk was going to rampage and wipe out literally all of the Avengers, and on the very next page, Carol shows up at Bruce Banner's lab in Utah all angry and trying to place Bruce under arrest. Taking him outside, there is an entire assembled group of Avengers, Inhumans, mutants. Pretty much everyone is here. When Beast of the X-Men hacks into Bruce's lab servers, he discovers that Bruce is experimenting on himself, and this freaks everyone out. But as Bruce is trying to explain that the experiments are actually keeping the Hulk persona at bay, everyone is yelling and things are getting more and more tense and out of hand when out of nowhere, 2 gamma-tipped arrows came flying out of the tree line, striking Bruce in the head and the heart, completely ending his life. Now this was Hawkeye, but it turns out that every vision Ulysses is having is pure guesswork and there's no guarantee that any of them will come true. So basically, Carol essentially caused the passing of Bruce Banner at the hands of Hawkeye based off of a possibility that he could Hulk out and take everyone out. Number 1. Captain America, Miss Marvel, T'Challa, and the Inhumans. The very last point I want to make from the second Civil War event comes from issue number 5 and 6. At the end of the 5th issue, when Iron Man's forces and Carol's forces come to blows, the whole fight ends when Ulysses receives another vision that he projects out to everyone who is in attendance. Now this vision shows Miles Morales' Spider-Man standing on the steps of the Capitol building with a beaten and deceased Captain America impaled through the chest in his hands, with him seemingly being the cause of it. Now this causes everyone to stop straight in their tracks, and Miles freaks the heck out. He pulls up his mask, unable to breathe, and is just sitting on the ground as Carol tries to immediately put him under arrest. It's so stupid because almost everyone here knows that this is simply not something that Miles would ever do. While Tony and Carol are arguing over this, Captain America is the one to step up. He tells Miles that he knows he would never do that and asks him what he wants to do, and he lets Miles go home. Now with Carol protesting Captain America, he simply puts out his hand and says he didn't do anything wrong, just like Bruce didn't do anything wrong, just like Rhodey didn't do anything wrong, who also died earlier. Carol then tries to chase after Thor, who flies Miles home, but she's grabbed by Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, who turns on Carol for like the first time ever. Then King T'Challa turns on her, and then the Inhumans just straight up leave. Everyone abandons her. It's bad. And that's all I got. I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you all on the flippy flop, and until then, peace out, nerds!